Bukayo Saka! That is a goal! Wanyeri tries one!
The PGMOL, where kicking a ball while you're on a yellow card results in a red, but kicking a man in the face is just a yellow. Welcome in to Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast. And it's been a minute since we've chatted with you guys. Been a few days. Apologies, been kind of busy for the three of us. But yeah, hope you're well. Hope everything's good with all of you guys. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, we're going to talk about the Andrea Berta news. We're going to talk about a couple teenagers. Well, one maybe we'll segue to the other. We'll see. We're going to touch on Forest briefly. We're going to touch less briefly on the upcoming match at PSV tomorrow at the time of recording. And yeah, anything else that might be related or might not be that we get to over the course of the next hour. So I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Blue Sky at shamsdale.bsky.social. And with me today to talk about all the things I just mentioned is Drew, who you can follow on Twitter at GeeChyKid and on Blue Sky at supplyanddemanddrew.bsky.social. Drew, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, dude. It's good to see you or talk to you or both. It's been a minute, like you say, but it's good to be back. And hopefully we'll have a good chat for a little while.
Yeah, it is. It's good to be doing this again after, little bit of an enforced break by life circumstances. But yeah, did you see JP Mateta get kicked in the head the other day?
I did, and I kind of the fact that it just wasn't an automatic red card just kind of sums up my thoughts about PGMOL. And we can keep that very briefly. I think it's I'm just tired of them. I'm tired of them being awful at their jobs, and we can kind of just leave it at that.
This is Arsenal, mate. We've got a full-blown rant coming at some point in the future, so keep that powder dry for now. Would you believe that's apparently the best referee in England? Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk about a few things today, but first, Drew, I just want to get your thoughts on the trip to Forest in midweek last week. I unfortunately wasn't able to catch the match, but you were. So just kind of what's your 100 words or less summary of the game and kind of how you feel about the team from that moment?
I'm not sad about the result. I kind of feel like, contextually speaking, it kept us in second, 6 points clear. Given the constraints surrounding the senior squad with injuries and who's available, I'm fine with it. Forest is a really tricky place to go. They're still in the Champions League places on merit. Yes, they've been kind of out of form at the moment. They lost against Newcastle prior to that. They dropped a match against Fulham. They had that huge win against Brighton, but then they also had that massive drubbing by Bournemouth. So they've been kind of hit and miss at the minute. But when you kind of break it down, we're in a position now where we need a goal or we probably won't be winning. So the fact that we actually kept them off the scoreboard, for me, was a success. We had a few chances. Maybe you could say we could have snuck a 1-0, but given everything involved, I'm fine with how things transpired. Keeping a clean sheet away from home, keeping them at bay, 6 point gap, I'm fine with it. And my answer would be very, very different if we were at a full strength squad, obviously. But again, how things are going at the moment, I can't be sad with an away draw. And given some of the teams they've beaten this season and how good they've performed across the entirety of 27 league matches so far, I think you'd struggle to find fans that are upset about it. So,
yeah, obviously full squad beat these guys 3-0, and just going off the results, right? This was definitely the nail in the coffin for the title challenge last weekend, with us drawing and Liverpool winning again. So I am a little sad about that. There's always a part of me that hasn't completely come to terms with something like that until it's actually, I don't want to say official, but basically like closer to like more like immensely more probable than not, I guess would be the best way to put that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things where I'm a little sad just because it feels like we are just trying to get through the rest of the season now. But yeah, I don't know. Do you think maybe it's time to end the Marino center forward experiment?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to chat about. I mean, the experiment itself made sense, but one of the things I had pointed out pre and post match to Forest is when you are deploying Marino in that role, you kind of almost know what you're getting, right? So it almost makes it easy for a team like Forest to defend against, and they've got quite a few aerial threats, both to tackle with him. If we're in the offensive third, and if we're defending set pieces. So yeah, I just kind of feel like it was a fun little thing when it lasted for however short that was, but I think maybe the reason why it persists is just because Sterling has just been what Sterling has been, so to speak. But I do kind of think we'll probably deploy it again, given a certain opponent, depending who it is. But I think against United, I don't think we can. I don't think we should. So
yeah, I honestly kind of wonder if maybe the move would be playing Guarneri, Trossard, Sterling as a front three, and then maybe playing Rice at 6 and Marino at left 8, kind of to be sort of a second striker to Trossard and see if that works a little bit better. But
yeah, I feel like Marino is so good at those late runs into the area, right? And I think we lack that often as well. I don't think it's necessarily Rice's strong suit when he does play as an 8. So having that kind of late run goal threat would be nice. And I just kind of feel like if you go with the front three of Trossard, Sterling, Guarneri, at least on paper, you have 3 very interchangeable parts. And if you allow them just freedom ahead of Odegaard to just find the pockets of space they need to operate and kind of pull United out, if you give them that level of freedom, which we don't typically see, but if I think if Arteta kind of like pulls away from being so rigid and allows those 3 players to just kind of find the space for themselves and create as they need to, maybe you'll find some joy there against United. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. But I do like that shot about starting Marino in midfield, dropping Rice back to 6, which I think gives us a bit more reassurances than a particular other midfielder in that same role. I would be more comfortable with that, I think. And then if it doesn't work out, then you can tweak things as necessary, but I would probably prefer to see that 11 than not. So.
Yeah. So we've got John with us now. John, who you can follow on Twitter at 305cast and on Blue Sky at yellowribbons.bsky.social. John, we're just talking right now about kind of the... Well, first of all, how are you?
Good. I'm doing good. I had a little episode with my dog. Decided that he ate something that didn't agree with him, but he's good. I just had to check up on him, so sorry for not being on right in the beginning.
No worries. Glad to hear the dog's feeling better, though.
Yeah, he's good. He's dumb sometimes.
Yeah, I remember my dogs used to eat the dumbest things possible.
It's kind of insane, really. It's like I look at this dog and I'm like, how? What were you thinking? But here we are.
Yeah. Well, what's your kind of 100 words or less summary of kind of your takeaway from the Forest result?
It's so hard. I guess that's 7-8 words now in counting, but it's so hard to kind of pull anything out of this season. It's like there's nothing. The consistency is so difficult to come by, and like it's hard to kind of figure out exactly how you feel one week to another. It's just up and down and left. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. So I think my takeaway from it is just being able to kind of cope with this kind of a roller coaster of a season and keep like a level head. So it's less about anything tactics and that was for me at least. It was less about, let me break this down tactically because there's a lot to do there and I think it's an important conversation. But personally for me, it was all right, emotionally, how do I just deal with this now? What can I do to? What kind of psychological barriers can I put in place so that it still exists, that I have the effort to do to kind of deal with being an Arsenal fan coming into March?
I was just telling Drew, like, it feels like we are just trying to get to the end of the season now. And, there's a lot of dead horses that you can beat in this kind of conversation. But yeah, I feel like now, just until Saka and Martinelli get back, we really are kind of in a holding pattern of just trying to find a way of making some combination of Nwaneri, Trossard, Sterling, and Merino like do something. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if maybe the solution lies in doing more unorthodox things with other players, right? Like,
yeah,
I've heard the idea of maybe playing like, White and Lewis Skelly as the fullbacks, and then in front of them you play Timber and Calafiori, maybe as like,
I don't know. I've seen Raya run pretty fast. Just make him the striker. We tried Merino. We might as well have Raya up there. He's running faster than anyone up there in the beginning. But you made a good point, and it kind of reminds me. Do you remember those cartoons where there would be in like a canoe and there would be a hole, and like the canoe is slowly filling up with water, and the character has like some kind of a jar or a bowl, and he's like scooping the water out, but it's still just coming up through the bottom. Yeah. That's how it feels right now, trying to figure out what the hell we need to do with this team. We're in a canoe and it's sinking slowly, and we're just trying to scoop water out and get to the end of the season. And I think that a big help is going to be Saka coming back, and those players coming back. Saka coming back is going to be huge.
Yeah.
We just need to do it the right way. But yeah, I'm down for trying weird stuff. I'm down. I mean, why not? Just screw it at this point.
Yeah, I've kind of hit that point where it's like, I think we know at this point what we're going to get from those four players, right? Nwaneri, I love. Nwaneri has been excellent, but it appears that he's only got like 50 to 60 minutes in his legs before he starts cramping up. So he's not, and that's fine, by the way. I mean, he's 17, right? Yep. So it's not like, he's not fully developed physically, but he's not a full-time player right now. And then I think Trossard's fine, right? I don't really have much of a problem with Trossard. Sterling, I feel like Sterling has one good game left in him this season. We just don't know when it's going to come.
Dude, you know what? That's interesting, because I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced he even has one. So hopefully you're right.
I would bet like maybe $20. I would bet like $20 that like against PSV or against like any like bottom 5 team that we play in the rest of the season, Sterling is going to find a way to just come up with like a goal and an assist in that one game, and that's it. That's all we get from him this season. But yeah, he would be honestly that would make this whole thing worth it if he did that.
It totally would, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he'd go down a legend. But yeah, that's the thing. While I am extremely sympathetic to the plight that we find ourselves in injury wise, there is still a part of me that just kind of sees Arteta rolling out the same team and just kind of thinks, you know what they're going to do here. Maybe this is your best opportunity to just get a little bit weird, to like do some funky shit and see what happens. Like maybe play Calafiori as a center forward, or play like dual eights with Odegaard and Nwaneri, or like try out like another academy kid if there's anyone you think is up to it. Something, I don't know, like play like Timber and Calafiori at the wings, or like do a 4-4-2 with those two as a wide middle, just like something weird. But yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. But we have, I think we've devoted more time than we needed to on that. The big story of the day, though, is I think all these reports are coming out. Fabrizio Romano is probably the most prominent journalist who's reported on this, but I think there are others as well who have kind of brought this up and reported on it as well. Apparently, former Atletico Madrid sporting director Andrea Berta is close to agreeing a deal to become Arsenal's next sporting director. And it sounds like we're really intent on getting this done before the end of the month, which I very much appreciate because, summer's around the corner, need to have those plans in place, need to kind of get the direction that we're going to head in for the next few years settled, because I do think we are kind of entering a new phase of the project. And I think it's important to get that appointment in. But Drew, I wanted to kind of go to you first on this. What are your opening thoughts on if Arsenal were to bring in Berta as a sporting director?
I mean, they're pretty layered, but as kind of we chatted before we started to record, I think my biggest concern, it's not his resume or body of work. He's climbed up the ladder in that position. He started in the lower ranks in the Italian footballing ladder. Then he went to Parma, then Genoa, then Atletico Madrid as technical director, and then he got promoted to sporting director afterwards. After 3 years at Atleti, so he obviously has the experience. He's been doing, I think, when he started back in, I think it's pre-2010, before he went to Parma. So he's been in similar roles or identical roles for quite some time. So I like the experience. It kind of trumps people like Tomasz Rzycki, who I would have been happy with if he came back to the club in that capacity. But it does show that maybe we're going after someone who knows how to navigate what can be turbulent transfer waters and has a good track record with that. But my biggest concern is I feel like when fans see the name, if we confirm the deal, I think they're going to hone in too much on the fact that he's signed some brilliant names for Atletico Madrid. But I think fans also need to be honest with themselves about the fact that over the last, call it 10 to 12 years, Atleti are a bigger club than Arsenal. That's not even up for debate. They've won La Liga twice since he was there. They've won European trophies since he's been there. They've won the Spanish Super Cup since he's been there. So I think the Atleti's platform has pulled players that I don't necessarily think even Arsenal's current iteration could. And just beyond that, I kind of feel like fans will have expectations of us pulling like the Griezmann caliber players of this world, and that's incredibly difficult. I was in a group chat earlier today where some of the guys were saying how if we get Berta, then we have to go for like Florian Wirtz, just like here we're already starting. It's just not that easy. And I do also think that fans also have to understand that it's very, very rare that Atleti ever drops like Declan Rice levels of money on deals. And I think you can count on half of one hand how many times they've done that. And I think it was ironically for Griezmann. No, João Felix. It wasn't even for Grace. It was for João Felix, and that was a bust move. So I just kind of want fans to be, and I know a lot of Arsenal fans struggle with this, to bring some measured context to what his signing would potentially bring to the role. I think it brings a lot of experience, which is great. I think it shows that maybe he can get deals over the line better than what we have been in the past. I think that kind of matters more than anything else, but I don't think fans should automatically expect us starting to spend 300, 400 million on 3 and 4 elite names for players just to begin to compete with Manchester City, because we know that KSE don't do that. And we know it's not part of how we're building the team. So I'd be quite happy with it, but I just kind of feel like there's lots of context involved that fans aren't going to consider. And that's my worry. If this club don't start doing those kind of things where they're just going to immediately just think, what was the point of it in the first place?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's obviously, Atletico Madrid is very different from Arsenal in terms of kind of the situation and, maybe the types of players or the tier of players that we'd be able to target, or, the amount of money that we're able to spend as well. I think there is going to be a bit of transition required, a bit of adaptation, but, I do like the signing, or I guess the appointment. I do like the appointment because, yes, we're not talking about like Declan Rice types of deals. Although I will add, like, we've only ever done like a Declan Rice level deal once, and that was for Declan Rice. But his track record is interesting, right? Where he's brought in players like you said, Felix. That was a pretty big flop. He also spent a lot of money on Thomas Lamar, which I think is kind of ironic that we're now bringing in the guy who bought Thomas Lamar maybe several years too late. And there's also Samu Ejihawa and Alvaro Morata, Vermeeren. He's very much credited with the Jan Oblak signing. Players like you said, Griezmann, Luis Suarez, Conor Gallagher was a big signing this past summer. There's one other player they brought in this last summer, and I'm Julian Alvarez.
It's Julian Alvarez, yeah.
Those. While they are kind of like the obvious signings, I do think there is something to be said about. I think this signals a shift in how Arsenal are going to approach recruitment, because I think that kind of mentality would actually, and that kind of track record, actually would have been really useful in January, right? Where you have Vlahovic out there, and you have Kolo Muani, and Ollie Watkins is getting offered to you for 60 million, and Marcus Rashford might be available on loan if you're willing to do a little bit of chopping and changing with the players that you currently have on loan. Like, there are options out there, and they're big names, and they're all a little risky, except for Ollie Watkins. I don't think Ollie Watkins would have been that risky, but there is like a level of risk attached to all of them. And I think to have someone in there who basically is like, well, that's Randall Kolo Muani, tell him that he's going to start, or to have someone say, well, it's Ollie Watkins, pay 60 million for him. Right. I do think that would be nice. And also Berta just kind of strikes me as like, I hear he's a little media shy, but he does strike me as kind of like a strong personality. You see these stories coming out about him where he was shoving a Man City coach on the sideline after a game. He came out and said, I spoke with I think it was Rabiot. I spoke with Rabiot's mother, who was his agent, and I ended the call because she started telling me what his position was. There's also him saying, like, walking down the tunnel during a game and saying, I don't like this ref. We're not going to get this ref again. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a level of personality that maybe we need at this point in time. And I think one of the things I'm looking for personally as sporting director is someone who has the, kind of the level, the size of personality, not only to challenge Mikel Arteta on maybe some players that he gets attached to that might not be the best idea, but also someone who's willing to side with him against the rest of the key decision makers at the club from time to time and say, no, we have to go get this player. We have to go spend this money. It's worth the risk, open the purse strings a little bit. I think that kind of personality is someone honestly that we kind of need, something that we've been lacking a little bit in recent times. But I've rambled a little bit on this. So John, I'll let you in here.
No, it was
what
great.
Are your thoughts? Oh, thank you.
It's funny because obviously Drew, you're eloquent as always, and you always have great insight too, Sham. So by the time it comes around to me, it's like, what can I really add to that? I will just say that it'll be whatever decision they make. That my addition would be that I hope it's something that's consistent and on the same page, right? So I hope they have a plan that they functionally execute, and not only just temporarily, that it's a long-term plan that's going to add stability to one of the most important roles, arguably, for the club right now. Obviously, management and things like that are very important, and getting the right person in to make the right decisions on signings right now and who we need to sign is key. I mean, we can't be 2 signings away from winning the title anymore. We need to sign the players that we need to, and we need to. I said we need to too much. We need to sign the players that we need to, and execute a plan and do it in a way that's sustainable and prolonged. It can't just be some transient thing where we do it once, one season, and then off and on. We need to have a consistent plan and a connected plan that actually shows some results, because that's the next step. No results, I don't care what plans you keep throwing in front of the fans' face, we're not going to care anymore. It's all words at a certain point. So, and we're starting to borderline on that territory, and I want to make sure that we avoid that. So that's why this is such an important decision.
Yeah. You guys ever played Jenga?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be weird if any of us said we didn't play Jenga. I feel like I'd have to question quite a few things.
Yeah.
So-
You ever play tic-tac-toe, Sham?
You guys ever play Monopoly?
Yeah, chess.
So I ask that because I feel like this is akin to building a Jenga tower, right? Where there comes a point where that tower is rocking and you really want to consider which block you're going to pull out. And I feel like we have become the kind of Jenga player that just stares at that tower until everyone leaves to go do something else because we've taken too long. And the thing is, in football and in Jenga, that tower's falling over at one point or another.
Right.
Right?
Totally.
I feel like Berta's the kind of guy who's going to take a deep breath and then he's going to pick a block. And it might work, it might not, but he's going to pick a block. And I think that's something that we need right now, where I just think we've been doing this thing in our recruitment for so long where we're waiting for the perfect piece. You know, we're so risk averse that we are kind of just looking at potential moves that we can make and finding reasons not to do them. And, you know, most of the time, I think that's the correct approach, right? I don't ever want to become one of these teams that's just throwing money at shit. Like, I don't want to turn into Chelsea, right?
No.
I'll just say that. I don't want to turn into Chelsea. But if you take too long, if you only make the moves that are absolutely devoid of risk, you're going to be waiting a long time between those moves. And we don't have a long time. Saliba might leave next summer. You know? Saka might be out the door at some point. Rice might go. Gabriel might leave. You know? So I think we're just kind of hitting a point where we just need to hit the button and get some players, get them over the line. And Berta strikes me as the kind of guy who I think can do that. I think he has a track record of getting these sorts of big names over the line. Obviously, we're not talking about like massive transfers or anything, but like we're talking about players that everyone knows are good. Right? And he has a track record of getting those players into the club. I will say the one concern I do have about him is apparently, according to people close to Atletico Madrid, you know, familiar with the ins and outs of the club. Apparently, Berta is kind of media shy, doesn't like to talk too much to reporters and journalists. And I think another thing that we've lacked ever since Edu has departed has been a little bit of transparency. You know, people have a lot of things to say about Edu, and I understand there are definitely plenty of valid criticisms. But what I always loved about Edu is his willingness to get in front of the camera and explain what the thought process was and what they were trying to achieve, right? So I do worry that maybe Berta doesn't help with that, and I also think that other people who are going to be working with him, you know, like Richard Garlick and Jason Ato and James King and Tim Lewis and the rest of them, you know, these are guys who are more than happy just to kind of sit back and let people wonder what's happening in the room and not really explain it. You know, so it's a small concern, but that's kind of where my head is at. But yeah,
quick, going to your Jenga metaphor, would Raul be the drunken frat guy who face plants into the game and ruins it for everyone?
Raul is the guy who will purposefully pick a piece that very clearly will topple the entire thing, and then he'll pay his friend $40.
Raul was the guy saying, hey, who brought this Lego piece into the Jenga game?
Raul's the guy who's like, oh no, I lost. Okay, Ted, here you go. Here's your money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hopefully that wasn't a crazy metaphor. I think I like to think
it landed.
Okay, that's good. But yeah, do you guys have like any further like thoughts or concerns on Berta before we move on to the next thing?
I don't know if I have any concerns about Berta beyond what I already said. I think the other issue for me is, I mean, we kind of already know that the club are going to want to bring someone who aligns with how Arteta thinks. So we can assume that we're getting that with Berta, at least in theory. But we also know that Arteta is still going to keep having a very large portion of the say in terms of who we sign because he's the manager, right? So any sporting director is going to take the manager's opinion of the want or the need for the player as the primary source of, well, okay, well, now I need to go out and get these kind of players. And if that means that we're still going to be trying to go after someone like, Nico Williams in the summer, I have no idea. But I do kind of I think signing or rather appointing Berta, I don't think I think a lot of fans they've had this bubbled up kind of fear that Arteta is some sort of dictatorial figure, and we know that he's not.
Yeah. And
that frustrates me. And I think getting Berta in might have fans thinking, oh, finally, Arteta's not going to call the shots. We're going to get all these players. No, it's very likely we might just go get the same players we've been trying to get before. It's just we're going to put them over the line. Yeah. But I do agree with you. Maybe Berta will kind of have that additional strong opinion / voice about, listen, if the players or these are the players Arteta needs, and it's going to get us over the line in terms of challenging for major honors, we just need to be paying the money for it. Yeah. That, to me, I hope would be the thought process behind that. And I think it's been reported before, even before the stuff about Berta came out, that the club are expecting, a big summer for us, regardless of that fact. And I think so. This point would be, I think it would be part and parcel and go hand in hand with the fact that maybe he's going to be the guy to get those big deals done that we're looking for, like the Benjamin Sesko's of the world.
Yeah.
It's a tough ask for him to come in, but again, I think he's got the experience at a club who, for me, are bigger than Arsenal in the current footballing space to get big deals done, to continue to compete with Barcelona and Real Madrid, not just in La Liga, but also in Champions League. And at least, build out that sporting project shows that, he should be able to do kind of something similar with Arsenal with us. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I kind of land with it.
I will say, I think in terms of alignment, I do think there's something to the idea that he's worked with Simeone for so long. And if there is a manager who I think is Diego Simeone's analog in the Premier League, I think it's Mikel Arteta. I think John, you gonna come in?
No, I was just thinking about that. Go on. Sorry, that was involuntary.
So I think they're both just kind of psychos in the right way. Okay, and they're very detail oriented. They're very focused on building defensively solid teams, but also teams are an army of bastards, right? And these are just like highly competitive, very defensive and like physically robust and really hard to beat teams. And yeah, I just think maybe there's something to this idea that if Berta can work with Simeone for so long, then maybe he can also work with Arteta for so long. And like I said before, he's another guy who can pound his fist on the table, when Tim Lewis or Richard Garlick or whoever are a little nervous about, spending the money. But Drew, I will say you are really right to be concerned about how fans are going to perceive this, because I was watching a pod today, very big Arsenal pod. I'm not going to name it, but I was watching them live today, and there was a guest on who kept on saying stuff like, oh, well, it's Arteta's fault we didn't make the signings that we needed to. The club gave him the money and he didn't do it. He kept on saying things that were clearly wrong about transfers and then saying actions speak louder than words. He'd be like, Arteta didn't spend the £200 million that the Kroenkes gave him in January. I think actions speak louder than words. Arteta says that he wants a striker, but we haven't signed one. I think actions speak louder than words. And I'm just saying, they're just like, that's not how it works. They don't give you money like you're going to go to Safeway and buy your striker and buy your whatever, and then you come back with the rest of the money and hand it back to mommy and daddy. Like, that's not how it's not FIFA. It's not Football Manager.
Can I just read something real fast?
Yeah, sure.
And you can hear it in my voice that I'm trying to restrain myself because I can't stand idiocy. So this is a direct quote. It says, he is a hugely influential voice, of course, but not the only one. Arteta wanted Watkins. However, he doesn't control the purse strings, and rightly so. He is the coach/manager. Tell was discussed internally, and Arsenal made checks with his camp on the situation, but I don't know if going any further than that. They wanted the 9, and he isn't a 9. That's from David Ornstein, who is easily the best source for transfer news. Premier League, full stop, doesn't matter. So if Ornstein is saying that Arteta wanted these players, but he's not the one controlling the money, therefore it's not his fault if we didn't sign them, I don't understand how fans can continue to blame Arteta.
I mean, that's the really annoying thing about sporting director, right? Is that, or like really any corporate job within a club, like no one really knows what they're doing because that requires information of what's happening behind closed doors. So people just make up kind of storylines in their head based on how they feel about certain people at the club, and then they just run with it, which is going to make for us seeing like pretty crazy takes about Berta and about Arteta and how the recruitment process is going if, we don't sign the players everyone wants within, 3 weeks of the window opening in the summer. So
what's going to happen is we're not going to spend 300 million on day one, and then everyone's going to say Arteta's holding Berta back. Mark it. I'm telling you now. This is exactly what's going to happen. That's going to send me to the fucking moon. So, yeah.
Why aren't we going to spend 300 million? Oh, look.
Well, because Isak's going to cost 350.
So let's spend 350. It's so easy, guys. It's so easy. You just write the check. I mean, you own Walmart. You can do it. We know you can. Just do it. Just do it. Look, man. I'm with Drew on this. At a certain point, you really just got to be a little bit realistic. And I don't think when I say we're 2-3 signings away, I don't think those need to be a 10 out of 10, but they could be a 7-8 out of 10. And you don't need to spend 200 million pounds on a player, 100 million pounds on these players. Even a 7. If we had a good 8 out of 10 player or a 7.5 out of 10 player versus like the nothing that we ended up, getting for the most part, we'd be in much better position than we are right now. So I think we just need to be reasonable with our expectations about how much money we need to spend and the kind of players that that we're going to get, for, first of all, the availability of that they'll have in the summer. We have to factor that, and it's not just like you can just get any player you want just by opening up a checkbook. There's certain teams that can do that, like Real Madrid, for example, maybe Bayern Munich, but they don't really spend a lot of money. I don't think we're there yet.
No, yeah. I agree, and I was to reference the same group chat I was in earlier today. I think, and a lot of those guys, and they're good guys. It has nothing to do with them as people, but it's just more of the demand for us to bring in like 2 or 3 elite level signings in the summer. I'm just like, well, we don't need that. And I'll go back to Liverpool. The only elite attacker Liverpool have is Mohamed Salah. That's it. If you were to tell me fully fit, if you were to give me Martinelli, Havertz, and Saka compared to I don't know, Gakpo, Jota, and Salah, I'm not taking Gakpo or Jota over a fit and firing Martinelli over a fit and firing Kai Havertz. The difference is minimal. Kai Havertz, Mohamed Salah is having a career season this season, and they've dealt with no injuries. That's the difference. But if you look at actual quality, I'm taking Odegaard over Szoboszlai. I'm taking Declan Rice over Gravenberch, and Gravenberch has been very, very good. But I prefer Declan Rice. This obsession with having to get 3 and 4 more elite players to close the gap, I think it's wildly misfounded. So I'm with John. I think if we were to get 3 or 4 8 out of 10s in the summer, like if you were to go and get a Šeško, he's not a 10, but I would put him as like an 8 out of a 10 rating for doing that. Semenyo, same thing. I put him at like a 7.5 out of 8 out of 10 if we're doing that. Zubimendi, same thing. A very good player, so he's like an 8 out of 10. Naipan has the potential to be an 8 out of 10 talent-wise, maybe a bit higher. So if we go out and get those players, that for me, and I'm with John, if we had those players, say, now, and we had an injury crisis, the result wouldn't have been as cataclysmic as it has been when it hit. So are we... yeah, so... Well, please
also, there's only one 10 out of 10 on the market in terms of, like, center forwards right now. Yeah, and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
right. And it's a good point, Drew. And I mentioned it on the one of the podcasts that we had done either 1 or 2 ago, something like that. It's not just about scaling up, right? So to scale up, which we need to do in certain cases, it's also about scaling out. Scaling out doesn't need to be an elite player.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sometimes I'll reference like the North American sports scene. So for those of you who are listening who aren't from North America, I apologize. But a lot of times you'll see it when you get like an expansion team come through in the league. Like we'll use the Vegas Golden Knights, for example. They didn't have a single elite level player when they expanded out, and yet still they made the playoffs 6 out of the first 7 years. They've won the Stanley Cup, like that kind of thing. So how you're building a team isn't always, do I have the highest ceiling possible? What's the point of having a 1-2 elite players in your 11 if the other 9 are a bunch of 5s and 6s? I would rather have an 11 of 8s than, you know what I mean? Like, to me, that makes more sense in my head.
It's it's like Gestalt football, right? Like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And in many cases it is. And that's what's happening with Liverpool right now, especially with their attack. The whole of Liverpool, granted they're lucky with injuries and things like that, but the way that Slot has them playing as a unit is better than any of the individual players in isolation. Plus, like you said, Salah having a career season. So
I agree.
It's really about getting the right dynamic. It's really about getting the right synergy, and it's about getting a little lucky with injuries and not getting screwed over by the refs, which we have. So I'm with you. I think we're all in agreement. You don't need you don't need every single signing to be a marquee signing.
Yeah. Liverpool are going to win the league with a bunch of 6s and 7s in attack, because they also have a 12 out of 10 in attack right now.
Right. Yeah, and that's here are the numbers, just real quickly. Salah has 25 goals, and there's still 10 matches to go. He also has 17 assists with 10 matches to go. The next closest person in assists is Trent Alexander-Arnold with 6.
Yep.
And beyond that, it's Szoboszlai with 3.
Well, he has Salah has over 75% of Liverpool's goal contributions.
Yeah, he's got 42 out of 66 goals have been directly involved. This is the point we go back to. If you were to strip Liverpool of Salah for the length of time that we've been stripped of Saka, they're not in this position. And it stands to note that even though they're having a very good season, percentage points wise, Slot has not come close to Jurgen Klopp, who has gotten 2.4 points per game, 2.6 and 2.6. So Slot's not even up there with Klopp's best season. It's just circumstances have allowed Liverpool to have the season that they're having.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I also think just we're looking at a situation where if Isak is off the table, it's Šeško, Ekitike, I think Watkins. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there's a few other options out there if you want to get creative, but none of them are. I think Watkins is maybe like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, like that kind of a player.
Yeah, Šeško and Ekitike I think are 7s right now. Maybe they turn into 9s and 10s in the future, right? But like there's no there's no level raiser out there right now who like comes in and immediately brings up the level of our attacking play. Maybe at left wing, Nico Williams turns out to be that guy. Maybe Semenyo comes in and has, an amazing 2 or 3 years after that. And,
but they're not that guy right now. And I think
not
that's
that guy right now.
Not even close. Like, look at Nico Williams' data from the season. He's worse than most of our attacking players at the moment, and he wants 300,000 pounds a week. So, or at least to become the highest paid player. It is. So to come in to become our highest paid player off the data that we're seeing, that doesn't make any sense. But again, fans kind of leap to names. They saw how well he played for Spain in the recent tournament. Like, I mean, I get it, but and I understand that just
he did have a 2-goal game like recently, which I think people are getting a little too excited about.
Because of course, like, why wouldn't they? So does Mirko Moreno. Let's put him on 300,000 pounds a week. It's fine.
I was just about to say it.
Great minds.
I was just about to say, you want to talk about Spanish players that did well in the tournament? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm trying not to go into the summer with any misconceptions about what the possibilities are. But I do think there are smart buys, and I do think there are bad buys. And it's just a matter of avoiding the buys that are clearly bad. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Berta. Again, I like the appointment a lot if it does happen. And, I just think it brings a voice into the room that we, in my opinion, have lacked over the last several windows. Well, not several, but like the last few. Okay. Before we preview PSV, why don't we chat really quickly about, did you guys happen to see the Max Dowman game against United in the FA Youth Cup?
Highlights.
Yeah. I didn't watch the actual game, but I saw the highlights.
Yeah.
Just briefly, because again, we're talking about a kid here, but I think the hype train is taking off.
Yep.
And I think now we are going to hit a period of time where, much like we saw with Winery, like just every couple of months, there's going to be a conversation about whether or not we'll be able to keep him. And of course, like United and every other team in the Premier League and maybe a couple in Europe are going to be circling, and it's going to turn into a whole thing. But I don't want to do a conversation about how talented we think Dowman is, because I think it's very clear how talented he is. But the question I do want to ask is, do you guys think that do you guys think that maybe like youth football and academy players becoming sort of the last frontier of efficiency in football recruitment is starting to lead to maybe an over pressurization of that environment, and like just like I don't know, just like weird vibes, and like just like pulling kids into spotlights that they really shouldn't be in? John, I'll go to you first.
So it's an interesting question. I'm wondering, have you seen any kind of problems so far with the way that it's gone for Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly, for example, or Saka? I mean, obviously Saka had the issues with the England team, and I think that he's kind of a unique talent and just a human being in that regard. But are you seeing any concerns with Lewis Skelly and Wanyeri? And the reason I asked that, as to answer your question with a question, is just to kind of potentially highlight this, that it really depends on the team and how you do it, right? There's a right and a wrong way, I think, to introduce youth players. First of all, to answer your question, or to address the point that you made, I absolutely do think that there is a heightened pressure for youngers now. There's heightened pressure for senior players that have won World Cup, let alone a kid. The thing that I think that the kids get, it's almost as if they don't have any fear. They play without fear. And I think that's a lot about how our team specifically has raised them, from Hale End. But it also goes to show just how talented they are. I don't want to take away from what amazing human beings they are. So going back to my question to you, do you see that happening with the youth that we brought in?
I think I think a little bit with Lewis Skelly, given some of the sorts of conversations that have been around him. Although I don't think that's necessarily a youth thing. I think that's a different kind of issue. But at least kind of the conversation about whether or not he has like a right to celebrate the way he did after scoring against City. At least people tried to make it about the fact that, you know, he's very young in his career and hasn't won anything.
But
I guess
we know that's pretextual, right? Like we know that has nothing to do with him being young, probably.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
like, let's be real.
Yeah. I think what I think about is how United are treating youth players these days, and also Chelsea. I think Chelsea are probably the biggest offenders in this regard, where they just seem to, you know, buy up academy players and then kind of flog them off to either sister clubs or loans in the league, and you know, just like kind of sell them off. I don't know. It just feels like very almost like trafficky from them. But with United, they've been doing this thing recently where, you know, they signed Cheeto Obi, they signed Aiden Heaven, and they played both of them, I think, when they lost to Fulham in the FA Cup over the weekend. And there's just like this weird, like, kind of like celebration of like getting one over Arsenal by like signing these players from them, or like snagging these players from them. And like I almost kind of feel bad for them, because Cheeto Obi especially, right, was kind of thrown into a situation where Ruben Amorim basically said to him, "Save me," right? And he threw a 15-year-old into this game, and, you know, he missed like 3 big chances. He was dealing with grown men center backs. I think it was an okay performance from him, but you had people laughing at him online, like, you know, especially a lot of Arsenal fans, like pointing at him missing, you know, a couple good chances and saying, haha, this kid sucks. Like, United, you didn't sign anybody from us, yada, yada. And I don't think, especially because it sounds like Cheeto Obi's a little online, I just don't think that's a good environment to create for players, where you're throwing them into the deep end before they're ready to contribute, and all of a sudden it turns into a roast of them every time they do poorly because they have some history with the club beforehand. I think that's kind of, you know, I think back to last season in the Champions League when some of the youth players didn't appear in dead rubbers and people got upset with Arteta. And I think this is the kind of thing that he was trying to avoid, where he throws these guys on and they have, you know, less than amazing games. And suddenly it's like, oh, he's shit. This player sucks. I don't care that he's a teenager. Like, this isn't who we thought he was. You know, can you imagine if like Waneri played in the 6-0 against Lens, and he like lost the ball 6 or 7 times, and then just the entire Arsenal timeline was like, oh, I guess Waneri's not as good as we thought. You know, they're probably going to see that, and I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I don't know. Top level analysis here. It gives me the ick. And I don't know, I just feel a little bit weird about dragging kids into kind of the hyper pressurized environment that is top flight football. But I don't know.
So I kind of mentioned the notion of them needing to be ready and doing it the right way. And you had kind of alluded to that when you had said that they're ready to kind of perform. And I think that it takes a special kind of culture and a special kind of manager to be able to do that in a right way. And a special kind of youth player too. And I think all of those factors need to go in, or else the issue is exactly what you just illustrated. What United did is the wrong way of introducing youth to a game or to the top flight. But I don't have any per se issue with introducing youth into high pressure top flight games. I think that it could be a very it's an amazing, exciting opportunity for them that they cherish. It's exciting for the fans, especially to see a homegrown player, a young player, flourish at your club. That's some of the best moments of seasons and of the game generally. And I would be hesitant to say that even with the thought of potentially putting them into a higher pressure situation, which could be kind of icky, like you said. If you do it right, it produces some of the best moments that being a football fan has to offer, really.
Yeah, I you know what, that's a good way of putting it. If it feels like the sort of moment that they have actually been prepared for, then I don't have a problem with it. Like when we brought in Winery against Brentford when we were up 3-0, I thought that was great. And he looked ready for it. The pressure was off. He just had to go kind of run around the pitch for 15 minutes, and that was it. Right, and he got eased in over time, as was the case with Lewis Skelly before.
Or just think about Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe both scoring at the North London Derby. Like that kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about? Like where we just heard the day before they were talking about, can you imagine scoring a North London Derby? That'd be a dream, and then they did it, you know? Like that kind of stuff, I think, for me personally, outweighs... I don't want to say outweighs the downside of hurting that player and putting them in when they're not ready. But like I said, I just keep coming back to this notion of if you do it right, it's great. Yeah.
And even like Smith-Rowe, when Arteta kind of turned to him to save his job, Smith-Rowe was 20 at the time. So, it's at that point, I think players are ready, or they, if they're gonna be ready, they're gonna be ready at that point. I don't know. It just feels like it feels like some of these players are like being used and kind of almost made expendable at way too early an age. But Drew, kind of what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you think this is a weird take, or is there, or do you have concerns maybe about how these young players are like being covered and observed and spoken about?
No, I don't think your take is weird. I'm trying to find the way to articulate this. So there's a few points. Like number one, I mean, I've been working with football players in youth development since I was like 19 or 20. So I've been doing that for half my life. And my brother has a very successful AAU program with basketball. He also works with players of this age that we're kind of referring to. And one of the things that he and I both always talk about is that you have to be supremely gifted to play up from your age. Like if you're a 15-year-old and you're making your senior professional debut and you're playing against people that are fully grown and matured men, seasoned professionals, you have to be like the Messis and Lamine Yamals of this world for you to have any chance of being successful and actually being able to stand like the test, even just the physical demands of that. I do feel like we're at the space now where a lot of fans are getting overly anxious about some of the talent we have coming through at the club. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's great that our academy is starting to produce the level of players that we would like to see. I think that's something that we've been lacking. It's a facet of player development that you see across a lot of other leagues where youth development is critically important, not just for residual sales, but also having continuity in terms of the kind of players you have coming into the senior team that understand the club culture, that understand each other on the pitch, that understand the manager, what's expected of them. I think it's all very important. Obviously, Barcelona champion this. You've got Ajax historically. You can run down the list and stuff. But fans also forget how much you're applying pressure on players that can't even drive a car yet, if you really think about it. People also forget that Martin Odegaard still holds the record for being the youngest player to ever play for Strømsgodset, and I'm pretty sure he's our youngest ever goal scorer. He was 15 years old at the time when he made his senior debut. He was also 15 when he made his debut for Norway. And then he went on to go to Real Madrid, and it did not work there because the pressure involved in playing for Real Madrid is not the pressure involved playing at Strømsgodset. It's night and day. And he needed multiple loans to much smaller clubs where there was far less pressure around youth development communities like Vitesse Arnhem and Heerenveen, where there's less pressure for younger players and the demands aren't the same. And that's when he finally started to kick on in his career. And then he went to Sociedad and then he came to us. I feel like fans need to stop commodifying younger players, but also at the same time, they have to understand that overhyping players that are that young, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed when they don't perform the way you want them to. And an example closer to home for us is Freddie Adu. You guys remember the hype around Freddie Adu, right?
I'm a DC boy. How could I not?
Yeah, and look what happened to his career. And I think that's a prime example where you can be so good as a 14 and 15 and 16-year-old. There's no guarantee you will remain that dominant when you start playing professionally. You have to be exceptionally good at what you do for that to transpire. So when we see things like Lamine Yamal making it so easy, it should tell you how good he actually is for how young he is. That is a very large exception to the rule, right? So, and when it comes to like Chido Obi like leaving and us losing all these players to United, like, do you know how common it is to lose young players to another club that you're in the same league with? That happens all the time in Germany. The amount of times that Bayern Munich steal young players from other clubs for fees, but that's almost expected. Like, Bayern will probably train them better than they can, right? It's no guarantee that they're going to stay at Bayern. A lot of times they will just leave for another club when they finally can't break into the Bayern team, so they leave, right? I mean, like same thing was happened with Amari Hutchinson. Like, look what happened to him. We lost him. Did he ever go on to do something big? Not really. No, he's doing pretty okay at Ipswich now, but it didn't happen in the way we thought it would. So, I don't know. My issue is I just feel like, I think there's too much pressure being applied to young footballers now, or young athletes in general, regardless of the sport. I think there's that, but I also think we can't commodify teenagers. And I think we have to be there's a huge precedent we have to be very, very careful with that. I don't want to continue to rant because we're running out of time, but I do think it's becoming a problem. I think fans need to scale it back in terms of how they treat these players on social media, how they are throwing too many expectations on them in terms from a sporting perspective. And I think they need to understand that organic development is very important. And I think that's kind of where I'll leave it.
Yeah. And this is probably going to be... this is probably a good thing to talk about on a larger scale for maybe like a whole separate pod. So we might do that down the line, get one of the youth football experts on here, and we can chat about that more. But before we get out of here, we're playing PSV tomorrow, or when you're listening to this, probably later today. So really quickly from both of you guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you about this match? And how are you setting up?
I'm going to let John go first for this one, Sorry, John.
No, am I nervous? No, because I mean, I've just had so much already. Like, what's a little bit more? You know what I mean?
That's honestly more depressing than you saying that you are nervous.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna enjoy it, hopefully, but it's kind of hard for me to get my hopes up because it's just so depleted, the team, isn't it? And how we line up. I'll be honest. I'll swing it over. I'm going to punt this one over to Drew for how we're going to line up, just because I have part of it's been just busy. I don't really even know who's fit anymore. So if who's still injured, I guess maybe who's not injured, shorter list.
So Saka, Martinelli,
so who's available at the front? So Saka's not available. Martinelli's not available, right?
Havertz is done for the season. Jesus is done for the season. I think that's it. That's
okay.
it.
So
in quotes.
So yeah. I think front. It'll be probably what, Marino up top.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be Trossard on the left and Sterling on the right, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I could. What I think Arteta's going to do is, Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel. I think he's going to play Calafiori again. Partey, Odegaard, Rice. I think he's going to go with Nwaneri, right wing, Marino center forward, and Trossard left wing. That's what I think Arteta's going to do.
You think over? Yeah, I guess that would make sense. I don't know. I mean, maybe. Yeah. Nwaneri has to start over Sterling. Definitely.
Yeah, I think Arteta's made it pretty clear that he doesn't trust Sterling.
Yeah. I thought Nwaneri was injured for a sec. So
he's been cramping up.
That's what I was saying, because I remember reading something about that he's going to be hit or miss or something like that.
Yeah, Sterling will play. Just he's not going to start.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I agree with that then. So it's a front three of Nwaneri, Marino, and then Trossard, and then kind of just the same rest of the lineup that we've seen. Calafiori's not injured, but I think, right?
Yeah, Calafiori's fine.
So then, but we'll see Lewis Skelly start.
I can see that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think Calafiori or Lewis Skelly is going to start on the left?
I think Calafiori. Personally, I think.
Why would do you think it's going to be the right choice, or would you pick a different one?
I think it's probably the right move, just because Calafiori offers a bit of like a wild card factor in attack. Lewis Skelly, I don't think is a slouch going forward or anything. I just think Calafiori, could score a goal from 30 yards out, or could pop up in the box to put the ball in, or like play like a really good incisive pass into the box or something like that. So I think that's kind of what gives him the edge in this situation. And also the fact that, after this match, we're going to play United, and then we're going to play Chelsea, and then we're going to play PSV again, all in the space of 2 weeks. So I think Lewis Skelly might be used sparingly, or just, Lewis Skelly won't be made to play 3 straight 90s. But, yeah, that's where I am. I think, I already said what I think Arteta's going to do. If I was Arteta, I would probably play Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, and then Rice at 6, and then Odegaard and Marino as the 8s, and then
who'd you play center forward?
Trossard. I'd play Trossard center forward, and then I play Waneri and Sterling as the wings.
That's interesting.
If Sterling can't do anything against the PSV's right back in the Champions League, then that's about it for him. So I think I would try him one more time there. I like the idea.
Would you try that away, or be one that you save for the home fixture?
I would definitely do it at home. But if I had to pick one of them, I would do it at home. I think I'd personally try to do both.
Okay.
But yeah. And I also just kind of like the idea of maybe Trossard and Sterling kind of rotating on the pitch, because I think Sterling at least can still shoot the ball, So even if he can't beat his man, at least there's the hope that he can pop up in a central position and put the ball in the net. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really clutching at straws here. But yeah, Drew, how about you? How do you set up? And are you nervous at all about this?
It depends for me what PSV show up. They not great form in the league. I think they've drawn 3 and lost 1 in their last 5. So they're on a winless run of 4 in the Eredivisie. They can't keep clean sheets for the life of them. I think they have 1 clean sheet in their last 13 domestic fixtures, or combined with Champions League. They don't keep clean sheets. So there's goals to be had there. My issue is how good they are going forward, and they're also a side that demand the ball a lot. I'm pretty sure they have something like 67% possession average this season in Eredivisie. They demand a lot of the ball. So how will we set up? Will we allow them to have the ball and just hit them on the break, or are we going to demand the ball and then get hit on the break ourselves? Because that would be my biggest concern.
Yeah.
And I heard you guys chatting about, who starts at left back, if it's Calafiori or Miles. I would go with Miles, because Johan Bakayoko, I think, would have Calafiori on toast, because he's so good with the ball. He's quite quick, and Miles has, I think, better recovery pace than Calafiori. So I would start Miles, to be honest with you. Noah Lang's on the other flank, so he might pin Timber back a little bit, depending on how that goes. Noah Lang's also quite quick. He's also a goal getter from out wide. They've got a lot of good players.
And then they got Perisic down the middle, right?
Perisic can play anywhere. He can play left back, right back, left wing, right wing. I don't know where he's going to start. I don't know if he will start, though. I feel like, because he offers a lot of versatility off the bench, I feel like he would probably come in depending on what they need, depending on how the match flow goes. I'm not quite sure. That's just a guess. I think it's got to be one of those situations, again, where I think we've kind of... I think if we try to dictate terms too much, it's going to bite us. I feel like we're asking to get hit on the break against PSV, and because they have a lot of creativity from deep as well. I kind of feel like it's going to have to be us giving up the ball a bit more. I would probably. I'm not impressed with who they have in defense, and Tyrone Malacia is their left back, so I would probably take Nwaneri in that duel any day of the week. I think Nwaneri should do quite well. Then get him to foul triple early would be nice.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the front three, I would probably go with. I'd give Sterling a shot. I mean, Ledesma at right back is decent for them. He's not a terrible player by any stretch, but I think Sterling at least can lean on. He has to lean on his experience. Like ask some questions. I would probably go with Sterling, Trossard, and Nwaneri, same thing. Maybe have the Marino wild card off the bench at halftime, depending on how things go. Or you start him. You go Rice at 6, Marino and Odegaard in midfield, something like that. Yeah. Or another wild card, start Calafiore in midfield.
That'd
with
be
Rice
really
and Odegaard.
Play Raya up front.
I don't even know how we'll set up, but I think either we'll kind of come away with a 2-1 win, which I'd be fine with on the road, or we're going to get absolutely slapped. I don't think it's going to be any way other than two. I think they do have a lot of goals, and like I said, they've scored 73 goals domestically this season, not including what they've done in Champions League. They ripped up a Juventus team. In the second leg, they scored 3. They scored 1 in the first leg to give themselves a chance to come back at home again. So it's tricky. It's not a straightforward fixture. I'll just say that. There's a chance we definitely get knocked out by them. There's a chance we go there, tomorrow, or we're already there, but there's a chance we line up tomorrow and lose comfortably. Given how things are going this season, so I really don't know what to expect. I just want to kind of see a performance. I don't want to see lazy mistakes when in possession. I want to see, it's got to be a level we need to hit, but even with that level, there's no guarantee. So you never know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Either way, as long as it's not too bad, we have the second leg at the Emirates. So, we'll await the results of Tuesday, which is tomorrow. And we will be back with you later this week to discuss what happens in that match. And we'll take it from there. John, did you want to add something?
No. I just wanted to be over.
Just so matter of fact. No. Just no. Get me out of here. Get me out of here.
I want this game to be over. Not the podcast, the game, just to clarify.
Me too, bud. Me too. Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and get out of here. That was John. You can follow him on Twitter at 305cast and on Blue Sky, yellowribbons.bsky.app. bsky.social. And then Drew, you can follow at Geechee Kid on Twitter and at Supply and Demand Drew at bsky.social. You can follow me, Sham, at Shamsdale, both on Twitter and at shamsdale.bsky.social on Blue Sky. Follow the pod. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky. Subscribe on YouTube. And if you could give us a review on Spotify and Apple, hopefully 5 stars, write some nice things. That would.
Oh, we hit 100 followers on Twitter, did we not? Thanks, guys.
We did. We crossed 100 followers on Twitter. Thank you very much for that. First 100 of hopefully many. So, yeah, thank you for being on this ride with us, and we'll talk to you in a few days. So, until then, take care, and bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you!
Santi Cazorla! Kyle Saka!